We're going to finish Bezrat Hashem Siman Hay today. We'll finish the chapter. Looking forward to it. Again, I'll have to finish a few minutes early today because of this new system that they have me using for Moreh Nevuchim, so I apologize for the shorter shir today. So why don't we get started? Okay, so we're up to the last two seifim of the laws of travelers and Tsar Balei Chaim. So we're finished with Tsar Balei Chaim, but we were talking last time about the whole halacha of creating a peshara, of compromising in situations where you're dealing with a group of people or even just two parties, and you have to know how to maneuver. When it comes to traveling, you have two people coming from two opposite directions, and sometimes it is necessary to compromise, and you compromise on using a halachic system that whoever has to inconvenience themselves less should be the one to back up, and we said that the person who would have to inconvenience themselves more should compensate the other party for their need to back up. Okay, so that was one scenario. Another scenario that we're going to see in Yud Beis is B'nei Chabura Shenischabru Lisa Yachad B'derech. Let's say you have a group of people who have taken it upon themselves that they're going to go on a road trip together. This was very common in the ancient and medieval world, is that it was considered more dangerous to travel by yourself. So if you were going to be traveling, even if everyone's traveling on their own animal, it's not like they had buses back then, but let's say you would organize a caravan for the very practical reason is that there's power in numbers and there's security in numbers. So let's say you have a group of people who have agreed to travel together. V'ira sheragle chamor echad mehen re'uos ve'enu yachol olechos maher kisha'ar chamorim. And it turns out that in your group that you're traveling with, one of the donkeys has weaker legs and is not able to travel as quickly as all of the other donkeys. Ein b'nei chabura rishoim liporedim chamoreim ulahaniach et ze levado baderech. He says, so the other members of the caravan do not have a right to basically say, sorry buddy, you're too slow for us, have a nice day, leave him behind and then travel on without him. And the reason is because since they agreed at the outset to travel together, they have to keep to that commitment, because by leaving him behind them, they may be endangering him in some way. So if you look at the Imrei Yaakov over here, he says, Dafka b'chi haygavna shenischabru me'ikara. He says, we're only talking about where they agreed mutually to depart together in one caravan. Aval im nifkeshu be'emtza haderech v'achar kach era le'echad mehem sheraglei hachamor re'uot bazeh ein tzarech lahamtin keben shelo nitchabru me'ikara. He says, in a scenario where they didn't depart together, but they all came from different directions and they happened to meet at a crossroads, at one of those way stations, or at what do they call them when you drive on the New York thruway, the New York State thruway? They come to a rest stop, and they meet up with each other. And then they start traveling together and they realize that one of them is too slow. In that scenario, they're not obligated to wait for him. And the reason is because since they had not mutually agreed to travel together, to take their excursion together, they just happened to meet up and start walking together. So then there's no sort of contract that was created with this group of people. And therefore, if one of them is really lagging behind and keeping the other ones delaying, they're not obligated to wait up for him. Okay. Aval im nafal chamoro ve'enu yachol leilech klal. But let's say the donkey falls, breaks a leg or something like that. One of the donkeys in the caravan really just can't travel at all. So then what are the rest of the members of the caravan supposed to do? So Rishaim li parid mimenu, Ve'ein tzarich lihitakev bishvilo yoter midai. So then they do have a legal right to continue traveling on and leaving him there, even though he's going to be stranded. It's a very vague terminology that he uses. They're not obligated to tarry there for his sake for too long. For too long. He doesn't tell us how much the time is, obviously, because it's very relative to the situation. Every situation is going to be unique. In other words, obviously, you would say they should try to help the guy. And obviously, we're not talking about a situation that if they leave him alone, he's going to for sure get killed. That's they wouldn't be allowed to do. It's just that he won't have the same level of travel insurance and travel security that he would have had he been traveling with the group. Now, of course, also, you would feel bad for this guy, right? Here he is, he's stuck. What is he going to do? His donkey broke down. It's almost, I guess a comparable situation is a group of people are traveling together and one of them his car breaks down. So in the modern world, you would be a mensch and you would wait until he calls for roadside assistance, and once you know that he's got someone that can assist him and tow his car and give him a ride, so then you would feel comfortable departing. But over here, that's not going to be the case. And if everyone is traveling on business, we could be talking about a person's livelihood being ruined, possibly, if they would have to wait for this guy. So therefore, as much as we would like to make a peshara, as long as we would like to make a compromise in this kind of situation, the halacha tells us that a group of other travelers is not obligated to stay with the fellow for an extended period of time if his donkey breaks down. V'chein b'nei chabura shenischabru lisa ba'agalot harbei, v'ira ezek hilkul le'echad mehem. And similarly, it's not just if donkeys are traveling, but if wagons are traveling together, and one wagon breaks down. V'tzarech lishot ma'ad l'takena kalato. And if it takes just a small amount of time, let's say the wheel is broken or the spoke breaks, and we just need to repair the spoke or repair the axle or something like that. So ein chavera v'rshayim liparid mimenu. The other travelers are not allowed to leave him stranded, ela im kein tzarech lihitakev harbe yoter midai, unless the amount of delay is going to be an extended period of time. Now, we don't know what an extended period of time means. Again, it's all subjective. So this halacha is not particularly helpful in helping us define every single individual case, which is generally why, they would have to make a decision. It almost, it's basically what the halacha is essentially stating is that the rest of the group is not obligated to sacrifice their travel for the sake of one individual. But to put themselves out for a short period of time, they should. They should try to make sure the guy is not stranded. They should try to help him as much as they can. But if it's going to involve an extended period of waiting, so then they're not obligated to do so. What's probably implicit in this halacha is that they should tell him, listen, we will, if you have a broken spoke, give it to us. We'll take it with us. We'll travel to the next city, and on our way back, we'll bring you a fixed wheel or whatever it is. And in the meantime, you have enough provisions to keep you here, so you'll stay here for the while. In other words, they have to obviously make sure that his life is not going to be endangered, but as long as they've taken care of that, that's sufficient. Okay, let's go on to the next halacha. Now, in last week, when we were learning this halacha, when you get to a very narrow road, a very narrow pass, okay, and we said that two camels are traveling in two opposite directions. That was the example the Gemara gave. So you have to create a peshara, a compromise, where one person has to back up to the point where the road is wider, so that the other person can move forward. And depending upon the slope, depending upon the amount of load on each camel, depending upon the distance to the wider area, will determine which person should back up and which person does not have to back up. Okay, so that's when they're going in opposite directions. And we said that in that scenario, if they're going in opposite directions, sometimes it'll be necessary to compensate the person who had to back up for his lost time and the extra effort. But here we have two people traveling in the same direction, and now you get to a situation where there are occasionally points on the road where only one donkey can travel at a time. So which one goes first? How do you determine that rule of which person goes first? So you would say to yourself, well, what difference does it make? They're going to get there at the same time. So, but there's a certain etiquette. There's a certain etiquette to determine who goes first and who travels second. So you're right, it may be like a trifling kind of issue, but Jews want to live their lives according to protocol. So how do we determine what correct protocol is? So one of them is going to have to stop, wait till the other guy goes in front and passes through, and then he'll pass afterwards. So which person should stop? Because also, I guess when you're traveling with a laden donkey that's weighed down, it's a bit of I guess more wear and tear on the donkey to have to stop, wait for the guy to go in front, and then to continue walking. So the way that you do it is as follows. If, let's say, one donkey was heavily laden and the other donkey is not laden at all, so then the one that is not laden at all has an easier time stopping, and therefore he should stop all the time to let the laden donkey go first. But hayushneim te'unim oshneim reikanim yasu pishara. But if all things are equal and both donkeys are laden or both donkeys are not laden, so then they should make a compromise. Shezeh yamod pam echad v'zeh pam echad, so that they'll take turns. There may be 2 or 3 or 4 times when they're going to have to come to narrow passes, so they'll take turns. This time I'll go first. This next time you'll go first. And v'chein b'shtei agalot haholchot zu achar zu v'chol echad rotze lisa ba'achrona yasu pshara zu. He says, and the same thing is that if you have wagons who are traveling in a formation. Now, usually the way wagons would travel is that they would travel one behind the other. And there's an advantage that the wagon in the back, I guess the guy in the back there's an advantage to traveling in the back. So the reason is, as the Imrei Yaakov says, the reason why you would want to travel in the back if you're part of a caravan of wagons is that you want the front wagons to be the guinea pig to see how treacherous the road is ahead of you. So if I travel in the back, if anyone's wagon is going to hit a rock and break down, I'll know to avoid that rock, and I'll turn to the side. Okay, so that's why everyone always wants to be the guy in the back when it comes to the wagons. With the donkeys, it's just the opposite. Everyone wants to go first. So again, you have to take turns. So in all of these kinds of scenarios, the Torah says, use justice to judge your fellow. Remember, that was the pasuk that we said was the source to teach us that people have to create a pishara, they have to create compromise situations. Not that each time you should go first or I should go first, but that we learn how to take turns. Okay, it's really common sense, but the fact of the matter is that common sense isn't as common as we think it is. Okay, so the Imrei Yaakov says Yasu Pishara, they should make a compromise, and he says V'lo hizker kan schar ki le'el sof sif Yod Aleph. Last week when we learned this halacha, we learned that the person who has to back up is entitled to compensation. But here we're not talking about compensation. He says because there's no major delay in this case where one has to back up. All you have to do is, for a short amount of time, just stop your donkey and let the other guy go in front. Because they're traveling in the same direction. So therefore, when they come to a narrow pass and they were traveling side by side, all that's required is for one person to stop for a few seconds and let the other guy go in front. It's not a major inconvenience, and therefore there's no compensation due to the person who had to stop his donkey. Okay, and then the next one, Lisa Bachrona, and I spoke that out. So let's just do the last one. Nun dalad b'tzedek tishpot amitech. That says, judge your fellow with justice. Rod Salomar midichtiv tzedek tzedek tirdov uchativ b'tzedek tishpot amitecha v'darshinan echad ledin v'echad lepeshara kid'il b'sif yud aleph. Just to review, the Imrei Yaakov says that there were two psukim. One pasuk says tzedek tzedek tirdov, justice, justice you shall pursue. And that teaches us that whenever there's a conflict between two parties, use the letter of the law to determine who is right and who is wrong. But the other pasuk that says B'tzedek tishpot amitecha tells me that sometimes there's an advantage to not going according to the letter of the law and to learn how to compromise, to come to a compromise position. And so what essentially this halach is stating is that there are going to be situations where you can avoid machlokas, you can avoid conflict, if both parties are agreeable to making compromises. Yes, it's true. Maybe the letter of the law entitles me to always go first because my donkey is laden more than yours. But at the same time, we have to learn to compromise. So yes, my donkey is more laden than yours, and so by rights I have a right to always go first when we get to a narrow pass. But perhaps your donkey is slightly laden. It's not fair for your donkey to have to stop 100% of the time, and my donkey stops 0% of the time. So what we'll do is, since my donkey is more laden than yours, so we'll do a 60-40 or a 70-30 kind of agreement, where 7 out of 10 times you'll stop and 3 out of 10 times I'll stop, so that we learn how to live together with each other. And that's just how people learn how to and today most of these halachas don't apply because we generally don't travel together with each other except if we're on a plane or on a bus or something like that. And there's very little to make a peshara about, although, there are situations of conflict that come up all the time. The latest thing that was in the news just a year or two ago was that people were getting upset when the guy in front of them would move his seat back to recline, right? And it was taking away their leg room. And there was even an appliance that you could order, I think, that was being sold online. It was a seat back preventer, prevent in front of you from reclining. You put this thing, you latch it onto the back of the seat in front of you, and it prevents the guy from reclining. And when society gets to that level, where people are so malevolent towards each other and are not willing to compromise, we got tsaras in society. You know that we're in trouble. Questions, comments? Anybody?
Yeah, we're one of those contraptions.
Alan Mall, welcome back. We missed you. You have nothing to say, Alan? It's been so many weeks we haven't heard from you.
Thank you. Not yet.
Okay. All right. So anyway, we'll stop it here. I'm sorry again for having to stop a little bit early today, but we'll pick it up in Mirz Hashem with Siman Vav. And Siman Vav deals with the laws of Hefker the laws of property that is ownerless, and how you make property ownerless, how you declare something to no longer be yours, and a really very important halacha called hasagas gavul, which this term we're going to get used to very quickly. It's translated as encroachment. Encroachment on someone's property, or encroachment on someone's intellectual property, which is or someone's business. When am I allowed to compete with someone else's business? When can I put up a shingle next door to somebody, and when can I not? What is considered fair competition, and what is considered unfair competition? So we're going to go through a lot of permutations, and this will become very, very interesting very quickly as far as some practical scenarios of Hasagas Gavul. All right, have a great day, everybody.